Hi, it's me again, Stephen Englander, small business guru. You know, my partner, she often says to me that if I didn't talk to people, I'd have more friends. And I think this subject that I've been asked to give a few comments on is probably one of the biggest reasons why she says that. And you know, sometimes I think I need to be a bit more PC and a bit more tactful. But the question is, when should I employ staff? And I hate staff. After 35 years, actually it's nearly 40 years in business, I found so few, except for the ones I've got now, that are not a pain in the neck. You know, not only do I have the indignity of having to pay them in the first place, but I've got to pay holiday pay, sick pay, you know, I've got to put up with them being off because they're ill, or sorry, football match, no, sorry, ill. And generally coming around every day and say, why have you done this, why have you done that? I'm lucky now because I do have a couple of good staff that just run the whole thing for me, so I can talk to you, and that must be a pleasure for all of us. So when's the best time to employ staff? Well, I think when you need them. Sometimes it's nice to have people around you, it's nice to work with people, and if you get the right people, then employ them as quick as possible and don't let them go, because it's a rarity. See why I'm not very popular? And if you're not an employer and you work for an employer, maybe you shouldn't continue watching this video, because I only care about the employer. Sorry, but you know, if you're not in business, I'm not interested in you. So you go ahead and employ somebody, but make sure you're getting the right people. So it's not a question of when should I employ staff, because you employ staff when you need to employ staff. It's a question of how do you get the right people, and you've got to kiss a lot of frogs before you get the right people. So I can tell you some stories. Should I tell some stories about staff people? I will. I had a client. He's gone to live in America because he got fed up of everyone, so he sold up and retired. And it was funny because he had a driver. He used to supply boilers to local builders and developers, and he had a member of staff that was so unbelievably unreliable. And this driver's wife fell pregnant, she was due to have a baby, and my client said to the member of staff, look, she's due in such and such a date, why don't you take your holidays then? So his reply was, I'm not wasting time on sitting around waiting for her to drop. Anyway, about 6 weeks later, she had the baby and he disappeared. Didn't tell my client, just disappeared for a week. And my client sacked him. And of course, the member of staff brought a tribunal against my client. And my client's, one of his defences was that, well, he didn't tell me he was going. He was offered holiday anyway. And what basically happened, he wasn't at the hospital, he was in the local pub because that's where he was found. And that's when I sacked him. It's a horror story, isn't it? I mean, this got worse because he ended up on the Rich and Judy show when it got hit all the papers. Thankfully, I wasn't asked to go and speak because, you know. But I've had that type of story all day, all the time. I mean, my sister employed somebody once that was fiddling the books. He was writing the lodgement slip of the bank that she was banking £200, and he was actually banking 20 and keeping 180. She obviously got a sob story not to call the police, so she didn't, and knocked the money off that he'd stolen from her, which was about £1,000 over a few weeks, off his pay. He took her to a tribunal because he wanted his pay, and she lost because she didn't report it to the police. So if you do employ people, play it by the book. You know, small businesses don't have the luxury of being distant from their employees. Giving incentives, yeah, give incentives if you want, but sensible incentives, not just because they're crying all the time they need more money. Make sure that if you are employing somebody, that you have a system of control. Make sure that your contracts are done properly, and make sure that you can afford to pay them. Make sure you do a budget to make sure that they fit in. Have some sort of controls in place so that you can measure what it is they are doing against what you expect them to do, and make sure they understand what it is they're supposed to do. There's nothing like, oh, I didn't know I had to do that. So make sure you get your paperwork right, make sure that everyone knows what they're doing, and make sure that any progression or any bonuses are all well documented. Again, another member of my family had a cash and carry once, and she had a really good Christmas, and she gave her manager £1,000 bonus. I mean, I wouldn't do that, but she did, and this is going back 15 years ago. Can you imagine £1,000 bonus? Anyway, the next year wasn't such a good year. She couldn't afford to pay a bonus, so she bought him a box of chocolates. He went mad. I'm relying on this money. You've let me down, blah, blah, blah. So anything that you do, make sure you have it documented, because he would have an argument in court that he came to rely on that bonus, and so therefore it's not a bonus, it's not a present. So it's just a case of, honestly, keep everything documented. Do keep a little bit at arm's length with staff, because even though there might only be two of you there and you're working together, there is still got to be that relationship between employer and employee, just so you don't get taken advantage of. Now, I've been very negative, and I've got 100 more stories, and if I could work it, up until now, I must admit, if I could get technology or outsource things or not deal with staff at all, then that's the route I've gone. I've been very lucky lately to get some really good people, but the really good people keep in check those that aren't good. So, but if you do have any problems and you're not sure what to do with staff, or you're having problems with staff, just send me an email. I'll see if I can help. That's it for today. Thank you.